Hi.
I was so aggressive.
With the eyes.
Yeah.
Welcome to another episode of Spread the Word. Okay, so we want to start off this episode by talking about how great it is. All of the orders that we're getting for social justice books. It's amazing how many people are just seeking out knowledge to become better allies. And it's just so great. Yeah. Julia, do you want to go ahead and start?
I read Saving Ruby King by Catherine Adel West. It takes place in the south side of Chicago. It's an interesting narrative format. There's not a lot of building toward denouement going on. It's sort of from the beginning, you know, the sins of each person. And then it's like kind of dissecting who they've become because of those things that happened to them in the past, the things they do to other people. The prologue is from Ruby King's mother's perspective. She's going home from church. You get the impression that she is a battered woman. So she's going home to an uncertain, home life. And it ends on an M dash, and you know that's not good. And then it goes to the first chapter, and you know she's died. And so you're like, well, it seems like the husband did it. Everything is kind of pointing in that direction. The way he treats his daughter, the more you learn about him. I mean, early on, you find out he was a child of incest. Yes, there's like a lot of hard-hitting stuff happening really early on in this book. But the character studies going on are really, really interesting. And I keep reading it and thinking of misogynoir. Like, even though there's men whose POV are being used, there's a lot going on with feminist and Black feminist thought in this. But at the same time, covering police brutality in Black neighborhoods. It's a complex book. I would find myself stopping and like staring and thinking about what I just read. You know, like those sorts of books.
Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like a good one to read, especially for people like me who struggle to read nonfiction. So might be struggling to read some of these social justice books for that reason and need a story to help guide your thought on that.
Yeah, I think definitely.
It sounds like a book that's as much about the moment right now. It's also about misogyny. It's an intersectional story. You can't slice apart somebody's life and say that you have this one thing you have to deal with. Like, no, everything is compounded, and that turns you into a different person and changes how you deal with the world. So yeah, it's meaty.
Yeah. Thank you, Karis Bookstore, for continuing our feminist education. We love you.
So I read Take a Hint, Dani Brown. So if you guys read Get a Life, Chloe Brown, Dani and Eve are Chloe's sisters who would come over and kind of like help her through these things, these struggles that she was going through, and they were hilarious. Chloe had a chronic illness and was struggling with that, and it was against the backdrop of that, her romance with Red. I loved that book. It was just so great. It's just like the part of this new wave of romance where they're talking about deeper issues and pulling in more owned voices. So this is about Dani. And Dani is really interesting. She's actually a witch, and it starts off by her doing like a worship thing with, oh my gosh, what is the goddess's name? She was basically asking Oshun, she's just like, please goddess, please, I just need to get laid. She was like really sexually frustrated. But Dani is like really anti-commitment. She doesn't want romance. She's just like, I just want to have sex with people and not have them catch feelings. So she prays to the goddess for this. And she has this friend who's kind of like one of those friends that's been in the background all along, named Zaf. And he is a retired rugby player. And he is tall, dark, handsome, Pakistani, Muslim, just all around beautiful man. They work at the college together, and they kind of have this like flirtation. And then one day she's like, what about Zaf? Maybe Zaf would be a good option. But you're getting like both of their points of views. And Dani's like, oh, maybe I can have sex with Zaf and it'll be just so great. And we won't have any connection. And Zaf's just like, I can't have sex with anybody without a connection. Meanwhile, so he's like, I don't want to put myself in a position to get hurt, because Zaf has a really interesting background. He's a retired rugby player. He was a professional rugby player and was in the spotlight a lot because he was a minority within rugby. He was Muslim. And so his brother and his dad die in a horrible car accident suddenly. and he was in front of the press. He was going through these like terrible emotions in front of like all these paparazzi. Like a couple years later, he started this nonprofit called Tackle It, and it's for young men in sports and fighting toxic masculinity within sports and letting them know that they can be vulnerable and emotional.
Yeah. All of us are like, what?
If you're a man and you're watching this, do that, please. Do you see what's happening to us? This will happen to the women around you.
Oh my God. I just like, this makes me want to just like jump this man. It's so funny because he's like all about facing emotions and she's all about like keeping them at bay. So yeah, they're kind of careening toward this whole thing where like the sexual tension is there. If you guys read Chloe Brown and if you guys watched the last Spread the Word, something Julia said is Julia is definitely the type of person that prefers it to kind of go to black. I thought I was that person until Chloe Brown. And now I'm like, I just want it all. It definitely does not fade to black. It definitely does not leave anything to the imagination. And the sex scenes are just like amazing. And they will give you so many ideas for your own life. So
that's an amazing recommendation.
Yes. Also for fans of Chloe Brown, Chloe, Eve, and Dani do get together and do their like whole like sister therapy thing. The interactions with Eve, Dani, and Chloe are just great. So the third book is going to be about Eve.
Yay.
Yeah.
Exciting.
So we'll see.
So in A Song Below Water, which is the I think the first young adult novel by Bethany C. Morrow, who was an author of a book we read for book club called Nem.
Nem, everybody. Nem.
Oh, hey! Look at you. So in this book, you have two Black sisters, Talia and Effie. They're best friends. They become sisters. So Tavia, character one, Tavia is a siren, and she has to try and hide her powers because it's the kind of place where they'll put a collar on you if you're a siren because you can control people. So they gotta rein that in. So she's trying to hide it. So she ends up actually she signs a lot to mask that she's a siren. Effie comes to live with Tavia and her mom and dad after her mother dies and after some unspoken incident occurs in a park. Later you find out that the incident in the park resulted in people turning into... This is a world where sirens exist and they're acknowledged to exist. It's not just magical realism or a metaphor. It's just in this world, it's real. There are sirens, there are gargoyles, there are fairies, there are sprites.
Lots of mythologies.
Yeah. Lots of intersecting mythologies that I want to dive all the way into. You layer on top of that, this supernatural element, and then layer on top of that being a young Black person and having to also worry about your life on a daily basis because they're Black teenagers, and that's not a world I've ever lived in. If you did read Mem, this is a very different voice. It's a very different approach, and I am Bethany C. Morrow is an amazing talent. She can flawlessly write a alternate historical science fiction novella and a science fiction contemporary novel about sisters and race. They're both flawless and perfect and wonderful and compelling. And how many people can do that? I don't know.
So yeah, that was our 10th episode of Spread the Word. We are almost to a year.
Oh my God, that's so exciting.
Yeah. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this episode and we will see you later. We love you all. Bye.
Bye.